within the cell. But does anybody know, does anybody know anything about the absorption of vitamin C into cells? Very low. Very, very low. With the certain exceptions. So what organ has the highest concentration of vitamin C in the body? No. Well, okay, yes, could be. Actually, you might be right. I never thought about it that way. See, I didn't even think about my own thinking. What conventional organ would have the highest concentration? The adrenal glands.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
And the reason why they do is, one, their metabolic demands are so extraordinarily high. They require vitamin C as a cofactor. But they, as a cell, they have special ascorbic acid transporters. Most cells use the GLUT transporters. And essentially, those are glucose transporters. And what happens is ascorbic acid becomes oxidized into dehydroascorbic acid, or DHAA, and it is allowed to pass through the glucose transporters. And as soon as it gets in the cell, it's reduced, and it becomes ascorbic acid again. And when it becomes ascorbic acid, it's trapped in the cell and it stays in it. Now, out of the amount of vitamin C that's absorbed into the system, very little is transferred to DHA. 1%. It's minor amounts of vitamin C. In fact, if we were to infuse large quantities of DHA, we would probably kill the patient. It's a highly oxidative metabolite. One of the most recent research that's used to sort of quash why you don't want to use vitamin C with chemotherapy is they tested vitamin C with lymphoma cell lines, and they said vitamin C was an antioxidant that inhibited oxidative damage by chemotherapeutic. Okay? The problem was, did they use vitamin C? No. They used this. Under the assumption that, well, vitamin C's got to act on the cancer cell. The only way it's going to get into the cancer cell is through these GLUT receptors. So the only way that it can get in is through this. So let's give lots of DHAA, dehydroascorbic acid. The problem is vitamin C is never given in that form. It doesn't approach that. So yeah, they flooded the cell. And you know what, honestly, many of us thought this too. We thought, well, we had to load the person with vitamin C. It would get absorbed into the cell, pushed in there somehow. And that's how the cancer cell would generate hydrogen peroxide, which is how we know vitamin C to work. But it doesn't happen in the cell. And this is the key problem. High doses of ascorbic acid are not an antioxidant. They do not go into the cell. They work at the connective tissue level. And this is an important finding and incredible research by out of the National Institute of Health in the US, by Cheng. I think her, she pronounced it K Chen. And it was published in 2008, just last year. An incredibly important research article on how vitamin C works as a chemotherapeutic agent in cancer. And it is by redox reactions in the extracellular matrix, not in the cell at all. The ascorbate radical, not dehydroascorbic acid, okay, the ascorbate radical ion reacts with iron in the Fenton reaction. So this old tradition, if you remember back to your chemistry days, the Fenton reaction and other transition metals with iron, copper, all the transition metals, it converts it into iron 2 positive from ferric to ferrous. Oxygen generates an oxygen radical ion, which is rapidly converted to hydrogen peroxide and oxygen. And the hydrogen peroxide is well absorbed into the cell, almost like water. And it is the hydrogen peroxide in the cell which generates the oxidative stress in the cancer cell and kills it. Why does it kill cancer cells? Well, because cancer cells, most of them are devoid of catalase. Catalase is an important enzyme that neutralizes. Catalase is extraordinarily present within the blood. And this is why we do not get hydrogen peroxide in the blood. Because as soon as hydrogen peroxide is generated, it's neutralized. this is what happens. This neutralizing effect is when you give hydrogen peroxide intravenously. This is what occurs. That's why hydrogen peroxide given intravenously does not act at the tissue. It really mainly acts at the blood level. Generates oxygen, hydrogen peroxide, DPG. It's involved in DPG activity.